Hello and welcome to Leadapreneur Online. This is Module 2, Passionate People, of the overall learning journey of how to lead. And we're looking at Step 1, Get the Right People. So why does it matter to get the right people? Well, the simple answer is that to do great things, you need great people. So the right people are the people that you need in order to make your goals and vision a reality. And if you aspire to do great things, then you're going to need great people to do that. In this picture, we've got the space shuttle docked to the International Space Station orbiting our planet. Think about what it took, how many great people were needed to work together in order to make this picture happen. It's not a question simply of money or of technology. You actually need great people in order to make this happen. And that's why leaders need great people to make great things happen. So if we think about this in the context of a football team, how does that team going to succeed? It's going to succeed because it has the best players. It has the right strikers, it has the right goalkeeper and defenders and so on and so forth. But there's also the need for having the right coach, the right team of physios and nutritionists and everything else, everyone coming together. It's very clear that if the team doesn't have the right people, it's not going to be able to succeed. And what applies in the football team applies to any other team or organization that you might lead. It's not going to be able to succeed if it doesn't have the right people. So therefore, one of your key requirements as a leader is to get the right people. And this is nicely summed up in the quote by Jim Collins, where he talks about getting people on and off a bus. What he actually says is get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and the right people into the right seats. So what does he mean by this? What he's saying is that your team or your organization needs to get the right people into it in order to be successful. Secondly, you need to get the wrong people out of the organization. The wrong people are those who don't have the skills, or don't have the right attitude, or don't have the right values. It's up to you to decide as a leader what defines the right and wrong people, but what's important is that you get the right people in the team and the wrong people out of the team. But then, just because you've got great people doesn't mean that they're going to be successful. You need to work to get them into the right role. Using the idea of the football team, you might have a great goalkeeper, but if he's playing as a striker, he's not going to be in his best position. So it's really important to get the right people into the right seats. The second quote, I think, is an extremely powerful idea. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And this is something because you surround yourself and your environment is determined by the people you spend your time with. If you spend your time with 5 excellent people who are aspirational, high-performing, who work really hard, then it's likely that you will be the same as well. If you spend your time with 5 people who are unambitious, lethargic, and not interested in doing anything with themselves, then it's going to be difficult for you to be a high-performing individual when you're constantly surrounded by those kind of people. So as a leader, it's really important for you to surround yourself with the best possible people in order to create an overall environment and culture of excellence. For example, out of a poll of 100 board directors from 500 biggest companies in the world, attracting, motivating, and retaining the best employees is the number 1 priority for business. And so this is not something that's just about being nice or being a bit soft. It's a crucial element of any successful team or organization. And in the final quote, we need to understand that it's much more than just getting the right people and then forgetting about it. Talent needs to be your strategy. You need to think about getting the right people all the time. Just because you've got a great team now doesn't mean it's going to be in place in 6 months. People come, people go, there are new needs and requirements. You need to keep your finger on the pulse and make sure that you're always connected to what your organization's needs are and that your organization is getting the people in order to meet its needs. So, summing up very simply, get the right people and get those people into the right role. And I just want to spend a little bit of time on the last point here. Get the wrong people out fairly but fast. It's important to understand that a team or an organization is like a living organism. And having the wrong people in that organism is equivalent to poisoning it. So what happens is that the ability of that team to perform is going to be severely disrupted and inhibited if you have the wrong people in that team. So one of your key roles is to make sure that you're getting those people out of the team rapidly, but also crucially fairly. And this is actually better for the people who are leaving and also for the team, because those people are not going to be happy in that team if they don't fit. Now, as a caveat here, it's important to remember that it's about getting people into the right role. So it might be that someone who seems like they're not the right person is actually just the right person in the wrong role. So before you start making sure that people are leaving, pay attention to whether they've actually got them in the right role. So let's have a quick summary of what we've covered. As a leader, you are your people. It's important to remember that and maintain that humility and awareness, okay? And what we see where this failed is in the Middle Eastern revolutions of the last few years. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and even in Syria have all been led by traditional strong men leaders. And what they forgot about was that they are their people and they're defined by their people. They were too driven by themselves and they weren't interested in looking after their people. So as a leader, you are your people, and in turn your performance and your ability to be successful, not just of yourself, but of your whole team and organization, depends on the quality of the people that you have. So that's why it's really important to have great people in order to deliver great results. And a very powerful example of getting the right people comes from the military. So on the left, we have a famous mosaic of Alexander the Great confronting Darius III at what's thought to be the Battle of Issus. So this was the second great battle of Alexander the Great and was a critical turning point, because this went from him simply launching an invasion of the Persian Empire to beginning to conquer the entire Persian Empire. And in this battle, it's thought that he had around 40,000 troops, whereas the estimates for the troops of Darius III are anything from 100,000 plus. So you have to understand that in the time before guns, one sword was one man. And if you had a lot more swords than the other, then it was likely that you would win. So Alexander the Great here was outnumbered more than 2-1, and yet he managed a crushing victory at this battle. And one of the key instruments of his success were that his soldiers were well trained, well drilled. They were the right people for the task. Whereas the soldiers of Darius III were not really soldiers at all. Most of them were just conscripts who had been pulled in off the fields and towns of the empire and were given a sword and were forced to fight. And when these kind of people confronted hardened and battle-tested soldiers, it's obviously inevitable that they're not likely to succeed. And this same idea of high-quality troops is what drives special forces today. Special forces take on the hardest and toughest missions, and they're able to do that because they're superbly trained and prepared for their job. The leaders have made sure that they've really had the very best soldiers in order to perform the hardest tasks. And in the same way, that's what you need to do. For your hardest task, you need to put your best people onto that. And it's important for you to make sure you know who your best people are and that you put them in the right roles in order for them to deliver success. So, how do you know who is a great person? Well, a traditional area is to look at something called competence. So, competence is a combination of a skill, an attitude, and knowledge. To use a simple example, what makes someone a competent driver? Well, they have the skill of actually operating the car. They know how to turn the steering wheel, they know how to operate the gears, etc. But they also need to have the right attitude. Someone who is a very aggressive driver, who doesn't pay attention to the road, is not going to be a competent driver. So the attitude comes into it as well. And then thirdly, knowledge. You need to know your way around the city, for example. You might be great at driving the car and you might have the right attitude, but you have no idea about how the city works. You're going to find it difficult to be a very competent driver in that environment. So competence is a combination of skills, attitude, and knowledge. And in the triangle in front of you, we have a simple model of what we believe a 21st century leader needs to be competent at. In other words, a 21st century leader needs to be competent at enabling their team and organization to adapt, to optimize its performance, and to innovate. And all the while, they are able to do that by being authentic, high-performing individuals. But there's actually much more to it than that. It's not simply about competence. And this is one of the crucial things to realize about leadership. Leadership is not something that you just do, okay? That's competence. Competence focuses on can you do the driving, basically. But leadership is about who you are, the way that you behave. And there's much more to that leadership than simple competence. And in front of you, we have the C5 model that Adepikos has developed. And this is where we believe you capture the 5 crucial elements of a successful leader. You need to have the right character. In other words, you need to be someone who does the right thing. You need the competence. You need to be able to lead effectively for sure. But you also need the confidence. There's no point being the person who has the right set of values and who's got the skills, but you're too shy to go out there and actually make a difference. It's crucial that an effective leader has the confidence to actually go out there and drive the positive change that they want to see. Fourthly, care. For me, this is one of the most important yet overlooked elements, because it doesn't matter if you are really, really driven by the right values, if you're a highly competent individual who's really confident, but if you don't care, if you're not committed through the hard times as well as the good times, if you're not really embedded in it, then there's no point in you being a leader at all, because what are you fighting for? Care is a crucial element of any role, because it also ensures that someone is really committed to it and that they're not just fair weather friends. What that means is that when your team and when your organization go through tough times, the care will determine how much people stay. If people are only in it for the money, then at the first sign of danger or that money being threatened, for example, if you might have to reduce salaries or pay people less often, then those people will leave. And then finally, connectivity. And again, this is something that's hugely overlooked in the modern world. Connectivity means your ability to access the right people and the right resources. A simple way of describing it is it matters who you know. If you know powerful people, if you know people who can connect you to other opportunities, that is crucial. If you know people who can connect you to resources such as money or specific machinery, then that's also extremely important. There's no point being someone who has the other 4 C's, but if you don't know anyone and you can't access any resources, your actual practical ability to make change and to be an effective leader is going to be severely limited. So connectivity is a supremely important practical aspect of leadership. So how does a leader get the right people? Well, there are 3 simple steps. The first one is to make sure that you know what the right person actually looks like. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, you're really going to struggle to be able to find it. So use the C5 model to identify what the ideal person actually looks like. Secondly, once you're clear about what the ideal person actually looks like, attract them through a combination of different factors. The first is inspiration. Great people look for great work, and you need to offer someone a really meaningful and inspiring workplace that has an electric sense of purpose in order to engage their interest and get them excited about working for you. Secondly, you need to offer them fair compensation. You need to be able to pay them well enough in order to make sure that they are really see it as a viable place for you to work. However, sometimes great people are volunteering their time, so it's not necessarily always about the money. Instead, you can offer another form of compensation. For example, you'll be able to offer them something like recognition. Sometimes it's much more effective to give honor and prestige and recognition as compensation for someone's efforts than it is to actually pay them for something. Thirdly, offer them opportunities for growth. By saying that they've got great challenges to work on and that they'll be able to develop their skills, this can be something that's really exciting for great people, as they're always looking for new opportunities and challenges and ways of developing themselves. Finally, make sure that you have a great work environment, that people are really attracted to it. This doesn't mean that it has to be super fun and incredibly hilarious kind of environment. What it means is that that person believes that they can really enter that environment and work at their full capability. So it doesn't have to be laughs a minute kind of environment. It simply has to be an environment in which people feel that they can give their best. And then finally, the third stage is assessing the right people. And this is where the idea of quality over quantity really matters. It's important to be very rigorous and data-driven in your recruitment. What we tend to do is recruit people like ourselves. And so what that means is we like people who are like us. And what will happen if we don't use a data-driven approach is that we'll tend to hire people who are like us, and our office will be filled with like-minded people. Now, at first glance, that might seem great, but what that actually means is that everyone will have the same mindset and approach, and you'll often lack the diversity and different capabilities that you'll need in order to cope with different situations. So it's important to make sure that you're recruiting the right people for the right role by using a data-driven approach rather than your gut instinct, because that will tend to let you down and just recruit people who you like. Secondly, be fair. Your credibility as a leader stems from your perceived fairness. So if people perceive you to be unfair, that you are engaged in favoritism and discrimination, then your credibility as a leader is really going to suffer. So that don't undermine yourself in that way. Focus on providing a fair and transparent recruitment process. And finally, be patient. It might be very tempting to dive in and get the project kick-started, but in 6 months' time, you're going to bitterly regret having spent all that time and effort recruiting the wrong people, the project's a complete mess, and you're struggling to get people to leave. Instead, it's better to be patient, wait a bit longer, put more effort into finding the right people, and in the long term, you'll be rewarded by having the right team. So, some simple practical advice for getting great people. Use that C5 model. It's really important that you're clear in your mind about what the ideal person looks like. Secondly, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be rigorous. Don't be fooled by thinking that you can use your gut instinct. Use a data-driven approach, but sometimes that can mean doing something a little bit different, a little bit interesting. So if you have a look on YouTube and search for the Draw the Owl recruitment, you'll find a great video that shows how one organization took a very different approach to this. Finally, keep the bigger picture in mind. Just because you found the right talent and you've attracted it to your organization doesn't mean that you'll keep it forever. You need to work hard at retaining your talent, and that's where the second things of growth and environment are really important for making sure the great people stay with you. So in summary, success requires as a leader that you get the right people, and some of the most important decisions that you'll make will be the people that you choose to hire. It's much better to focus on having a small team of great people than having a large team of people who are uncommitted. So in summary, get great people, and you'll build the best possible platform to have great success.